episode, we'll be talking about COVID-19. Now, the reason I'm doing this video, which is a little bit different than what I normally do, is simply because there is just tons of misinformation and ignorance and just plain insanity out there. It is non-stop. And I figured, well, we need to clarify some of this crap. So first of all, no, it is not as deadly as the Black Plague. Yes, there are actually people out there trying to compare this to the Black Plague. Now, if you're a healthy person that's under the age of 65, you're not going to die. It's very unlikely. As a matter of fact, more than 80% of people in the entire world who got COVID-19 recovered just fine on their own, in their own home, treating it as if they had influenza. Yeah, that's right. Now, the people who actually died, when you look at statistics, are people who are over 65, people with respiratory or autoimmune deficiencies, and, well, one of the main concerns for America would be obesity, because obesity brings on a whole bunch of diseases on its own, including respiratory and cardiovascular issues, which, yes, again, if you have pre-existing conditions such as asthma, right, or something along the lines of an autoimmune deficiency or anything like that, then yes, you should take this pretty seriously, but you should also take everything, including influenza, seriously, because even influenza could kill you if you have one of those issues. As a matter of fact, over 50,000 people died in the USA alone from influenza. Yeah, and this is, you got to keep this in mind, this is with vaccines and cures, such as we have things like Tamiflu or Teraflu, depending on what type of flu you have. You could take something which will lessen the conditions and lessen the harshness and lessen the recovery time. So we have all these things. And even with our immune system having immunity to it at this point, obviously there's mutations which then allow us to get it back, but we have a somewhat to a point immunity to it. There are still that many deaths from it. So yes, influenza can be a lot scarier if you look at it from that aspect, because coronavirus doesn't have a cure. It doesn't have a vaccine, which again, even if you have a vaccine, doesn't mean it is a cure. People like to confuse those two. Look at the last measles outbreak. What was it? Something like 24% of the people who died from the last measles outbreak had the vaccine shot for the measles. So you got to remember, it's not a cure. It can help in a lot of cases. I'm not saying don't get one, because you should get a vaccine, okay, for most cases, such as measles, because there is a higher percentage of a chance of it doing more good than harm from not having one. But you're not going to die if you're healthy. It's very freaking rare. It's less than 0.001% of healthy people that die. Again, if you look at the statistics, the people who died, again, are over 65, autoimmune deficiency. They have a respiratory condition. There's a whole bunch of these issues. Now, of course, America has a big obesity problem. As a matter of fact, it's probably the #1 obesity issue in the entire world out of every other country. So yes, you're probably going to see a lot more deaths, but they're going to be coming from the obesity factor. Now, some of the other information or misinformation is wearing a mask. Yes, all you people keep buying these damn masks when you're not even sick. Well, guess what? If somebody coughs, guess what? Your eyes are exposed, okay? So unless you're out there in a hazmat suit that you clean before you take off and you put it on like in a chamber somewhere, it's not gonna do you any good. Wearing a mask, yes, will help a little bit. I'm not gonna say it doesn't help at all, but it's not gonna prevent you from getting sick. Again, you have your eyes, you have cuts, you have pores, you have all these other areas that it could get into. All right, so that's not really gonna do anything. And then on top of it, you sit there saying, only stay away from sick people. Well, dude, COVID-19, this is the worst part about COVID-19 over everything. Okay, COVID-19 has a 2-week incubation process, which means it takes 2 weeks to develop symptoms, right? Such as a cough and all that other great crap, your fever, all that stuff. It's an incubation process. Now, during those 2 weeks where you show no symptoms, you are contagious. Yes, that's right, they are contagious. So all these people that you're hanging around with that you don't think are sick probably could have it. And I know a lot of you people are saying, well, there is, I think right now, roughly, don't get me wrong, because the numbers are going to change based on when I say this and when the video comes out, roughly 100 cases of COVID-19 in the USA alone. Well, that's not true, okay? Because you got to remember, these are 100 documented cases of it. You got to remember all the thousands of people that probably have this and think they just have a flu. They get over it. They don't go to the doctors. And a lot of the time, the doctors don't even give them a check. They don't even check for it. They're not even checking for it half the time. So you got to remember, these numbers are probably somewhere at least 100 times the amount of people have it than what they're saying they have it, right? So COVID-19 testing is not being done 100% of the time just because you have a fever. A lot of doctors should, yes, but they're not. Now you got to remember, up until recently, if you didn't have insurance, this is one of the reasons why not all the doctors were doing it. Not everybody was going to the doctors because not everybody has insurance. And then on top of it, they were charging $3,000. Yeah, $3,000 if you didn't have insurance to be tested for COVID-19. And yes, Trump, our president, I know a lot of you hate him, some of you like him. I'm not talking about any of that, but Trump did do this. He waived those fees. He got them removed. So if you don't have insurance, you're not going to be charged $3,000. A lot of the testing now is free. And yes, Trump did have something to do with that. Regardless, again, if you hate him, fine. If you like him, fine. I don't care. I'm just telling you who did this and why this is happening now. He did have it removed. So yes, they are free. And not only that, but yes, old people can actually, the elderly, if I have old people and you're offended now, the elderly will soon be able to have people come to their house and test. This way they don't have to go out into the public, which is a great thing. But again, a lot of these things have to do, again, with the worst case scenario, a 2-week incubation process, which during that 2-week incubation process time, you are contagious. You don't know you're sick and you're giving it to people. You're touching things, they're touching it, then touching them else. That's the number one way of doing it. People who bite their nails, yeah, well, you're pretty much screwing yourself right now. But again, people can cough and they could not even know they have it, and they could cough and it could touch your eyes, and guess what? You're now infected. Forget the mask. The only thing the mask is good for is for people who don't have beards and people who are sick. That is the number one people who should be having the mask, because it's very hard for them to spread it. And of course, you've got to have a specific type of mask, because not all masks work, because certain droplets can get through the filtration process of that said mask on top of it. You know, there's so many variables that people don't understand. It's ridiculous. Like everybody who is out there just hoarding all the spray, right? The Lysol disinfectant spray. Well, up until recently, you got to understand. Here's what everybody's posting. Look, it says on the bottle, coronavirus. Yeah, it says coronavirus. It's not talking about COVID-19. Coronavirus from the 1960s, because coronavirus human and coronavirus animal has been around since the 1960s. This is not the same strain. All right? So this is one of the many reasons why they had to change the name of it to COVID-19, because of idiots. And that's not even the worst case when I talk about idiots, because when I refer to the idiots revolving coronavirus, I know about the idiots who sent death threats and crap to Corona. Yes, the Corona alcohol bottling company, there were actually death threats to them. It didn't come from them. It allegedly, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, it allegedly came from somebody eating a bat, essentially, okay? And this has been an ongoing thing in China. People eat wild animals, and such as MERS, SARS, coronavirus, all this stuff has technically stemmed from that. And they waited until recently now, the 4th or 5th outbreak, to say, hey, it's illegal to eat wild animals. Okay, but I don't even think that's where it came from. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. So you have all these people who are rushing out buying this stuff, thinking that it's going to protect from COVID-19. Which, yes, that one particular brand, a lot of their stuff does protect it from it, and not all of it does, and Clorox did, but not all of it. And up until recently, there was actually no study, no EPA, no anything, no testing done on this to know if it actually affected COVID-19. And a lot of the times, people were buying anything as a cleaner, and that wasn't even going to work. Even back a month ago, this was very obvious. You could go and look up research and studies done for viruses with that hardened shell and how it breaks it down. A lot of this stuff doesn't break it down. You need something like bleach, certain amounts of peroxide mixed with certain amounts of alcohol, so on and so forth. As far as hand sanitizers are concerned, it needs to be at least 60% alcohol in order to affect your hands. But in that case, that's only for when you're out. If you go to a gas station or fuel station, you should go to Shell. Shell is not only a top tier fuel, Shell also has, for the last year, has had hand sanitizer on the side of their pumps. Now, how many people do that? That doesn't matter. What matters is you have the opportunity to go ahead and use that. You could rub it on the pump, whatever, and then on your hands. It is a great place to keep it constricted and as little as possible of transferring any type of virus. I'm not just going to talk about COVID-19, but influenza, especially when it's influenza season, because that's the last thing you want is having influenza and COVID-19. You don't want two things, right? That's probably going to kill even a healthy person, right? So going to some place like Shell that has that is good. When you're out, sanitizing, washing hands is good. But when you're home, you don't need hand sanitizer. Soap works better. Soap is better because the more sanitizer you use, the more dried out and cracked your skin gets. And some people use it so much that it will crack their skin to the point that it creates openings. And guess what? Now when they touch crap, washing your hands ain't gonna do nothing because it's already infecting you. It's already in there. So you also gotta remember, I guess if you wanna get girly about it, I'm not trying to sound sexist or anything, but hand moisturizers like every night if you're going to be using hand sanitizer all the time, especially 60% or more alcohol. That really dries your skin out. Taking multiple showers in a day is good, especially if they're hot. That helps a lot. But of course, you already have it at that point if you have it. There's nothing you're going to do. It's not going to like get around your pants and touch your leg, and then you're going to touch your leg and get it. No, that's not how it's going to work at all. So, and then these people who have the masks have exposed clothes on top of it. Well, guess what? If it's on your clothes, you go home and you sit, and this was within a 3 hour, because the studies currently show, this could change even in the next hour before I put this video up, up to 3 hours, it can survive on hard surfaces. That is it. Where, of course, influenza is somewhere around 48 hours, depending on the strain and the surface. So up to 3 hours. So you're talking about if you go out and somebody doesn't know they're sick and they give you a pat on the back, right? They've just coughed in their hand or just rubbed their nose. They give you a pat on the back. You go home. This is within, let's say, the span of an hour. You touch your back to something. Yes, I know this is a long shot, but it can happen. This stuff does actually happen. Very small percentage. Touch that. Then it's like your kid comes over, bam, touches that, and then touches their mouth like they normally do, like this. Oh, I'm scratching my nose and my mouth. Guess what? You got it. Now, again, that is a very long exaggeration. Don't take that too seriously, but it does happen. Again, that's why the masks don't work. So in short, unless you're going to go out in a hazmat suit again and sterilize this thing before you take it off and when you put it on, that's how they do it. They put the hazmat suits on, they go into a chamber blasts you with a sterilization process. You then go into the quarantined areas. You come back, you get blasted again. In a lot of cases, you can get blasted, you take the hazmat suit on, you go and change your clothes, and before you leave, a second blast hits you in a second chamber. Sometimes they're double, even triple chambered. I mean, that's the only real way you're going to prevent something like that, unless you stay in home completely and never order anything or touch anything or anything like that. It's absolutely insane, right? So these are just a lot of the clarifications. I see a lot of ignorance in regards to this stuff. I'm not going to go too crazy with anything, with some theories I have. If you want to know about one of my theories about how this actually started, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, because I'll tell you what, 300 likes, yes, 300 likes on this video, and I will tell you my actual theory, and I will back it. Now, obviously not with evidence, but I will tell you how I came to the conclusion of that theory and what it's based on, with using factual statistics and factual information as to how it was concluded, but couldn't really prove the point, but how I came to that conclusion. Again, 300 likes, and I will make a video on my theory and how coronavirus, or in this case, this particular strand, COVID-19, what it's actually called, got started. Now, with all that said, kids can't even really get sick from it. The amount of kids that got sick from it was like less than it was like 1,000th of 1%. It's some absurd number. It's like 2 kids in the entire world got sick. And that was because they already had a compromised immune system. This does not affect kids. However, kids are carriers of the disease. So they're going to spread it like crazy. You're never going to know they have it. But that's one thing you don't really have to worry about, is kids getting it. Again, you should be worried about influenza. When it comes to kids, you should be more worried about them contracting influenza than COVID-19, and because it's more dangerous to them. However, again, if they're sick, you don't know it, and you go see their grandparents and they get sick, that's a danger. So yes, there are instances that are dangerous, but you've got to separate factual information from information saying, oh, everybody's going to get it, everybody's going to die, this is the end of the world. No, it's not. However, again, if you have things such as an autoimmune deficiency, if you have respiratory diseases, if you are obese in America, if you are over the age of 65, 70, yes, this is a threat to you, but guess what? So is influenza. And I'm not trying to be one of those people that compares this, because I'm not going to compare it, because there's a difference. One has vaccines and one we have immunity to, where one, there is no immunity to COVID-19, in case you didn't know that. You can contract it multiple times. So if you're in a household of 11 people, you can pass it around consistently, and you could get it back again, because there's no immunity. Your body does not create immunity. There are cases where people have gotten this 2 or 3 times. Okay, and it's not a change in the strain. There's just, your body doesn't create immunity for COVID-19. That's another bad problem with it. There are things that are very dangerous about COVID-19, okay, for certain people. But again, the incubation process, the fact that you can be contagious during those 2 weeks with no symptoms. Kids who show no symptoms and aren't sick, they can't really get sick from it. That's no danger to them, but they can pass it on to somebody who it is a danger to, right? There are more dangerous things than influenza, and there are less dangerous things than influenza, right? So it's not so cookie cutter in a sense. I hate that term, but this is like the perfect terminology for something like that. It's not that simplistic of a comparison. There's a lot of variables. There's pros and cons to both sides, just like there's pros and cons to a vaccine for a lot of people. Pros outweigh the cons for vaccines, which is why you should get them, unless of course there's a history of having allergic reactions, and then it should be done in a nice constrained area where a doctor is monitoring that child for a couple hours just to be on the safe side if there's a history. There's a lot of, pros and cons to everything. Everything isn't as cut as dry as anti-vaxxers or for vaxxers or anti-COVID-19 or for COVID-19 or influenza's worse or COVID. No, it's not that simplistic. There are so many variables that it's not as simplistic of an argument as that in anything. Again, when it comes to vaccines or anything like that, those arguments are not that simplistic. It's not yes or no. There is that gray area, and that gray area is the majority in a lot of the cases. It all depends on the person. It depends on their personal respiratory system, their autoimmune deficiencies, their age, their health, their obesity. And a lot of people don't like to hear this, but unfortunately, fat people have the biggest problems with any disease, influenza, COVID-19, anything. The common cold is worse for them because with obesity comes a lot of bad things. I know a lot of people like to put in their mind that everybody is equal. They're not. And people who are obese have more chance of getting cardiovascular disease. They're not going to live as long. They have respiratory issues. There's actually particular diseases that they can get simply from being obese. And a lot of things, again, are also genetic. Genetic is one thing people don't want to talk about because then that means certain people are better than others in these instances, and that's the truth. Genetics is the major key role. No matter what you eat, no matter how much you exercise, genetics is the overall key factor. Genetics will determine the longevity of your life. Genetics will determine how easily you can get sick, how well you recover. For instance, there is actually a snippet in your genetics that actually will tell you on whether or not how well you can fight off things in your lungs, such as smoking, which is why some people can smoke for 40 years and never get lung cancer, and some people can smoke for 2 years and end up with lung cancer from the cigarette smoke. So it's not that simplistic, and again, overall, your genetics play the key factor, and unless you have a genetic swab done, which there are genetic testing done. I used to work for a company called GeneWise, and we would do genetic testing, right? And we would look at your genetic snippets and then give the information back. And then you would have a full list of information on what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating, and if you need more of this. And yes, you can tell those things from your genetics because your genetics is the key foundation to everything about your health. So for instance, my family history of the female side, their genetics is anywhere from 90 to 100 plus longevity in their life, okay? Now, again, you can do things bad throughout your life that could shorten that. However, if they do things properly, they can have a full, long, healthy life, right? So for instance, my grandmother's sister died. She smoked for 30 some years of her life, easily, if not 40, 50 plus years, probably longer. Okay, as long as I can ever remember, and I'm not even half of those numbers, but I guarantee it was longer than that. And she passed away around 92. My grandmother, who never smoked, passed away around 92, 93 as well, right? So again, those genetics are key form factors, and you can find people who smoked for 10 years and they're gonna die at the age of 60 from lung cancer or something due to the smoking or other conditions caused from smoking. So it really comes down to that, and that's a big thing. So if you have, I think when I worked for GeneWise, we charged $90. I think they could be cheaper now, and they check everything. And yes, there are certain vitamins and things like that you should have on a daily basis, unless you have a deficiency in your doctor or any type of person in that field that's consulting with you. I mean, I say I do this as a broad spectrum because I played sports, and we had specific people who would tell us give us dietary plans for each specific player. We would all have our own diets in a sense at some points, and everybody's would be different. Okay, so there are people who specialize in this. Dietitians, I believe, this somewhere along the lines is what ours was called. And they will give you specific things, but you can look at your genetics and see if you need more of something, not just the foundation of whatever the majority of people, I should say, need, but some people need more based on their genetics. It will help them. It will make them feel better. It's all a genetic thing. I just want to put this out, how many variables. This is why it's not so much rambling as much as I'm trying to get you in a layman terms to understand the variables in all this. It's not cut and dry. And the majority of the people who are affected, again, kids, next to nothing affected, but they do transfer. But again, if you have an autoimmune deficiency, if you have a respiratory issue. If you're over the age of 65, if you're obese, yes, you should be concerned, but again, be concerned about everything. Influenza, the way you eat, the way you drink, get rid of sodas, things like this. Don't eat crappy food. They do lower your immune system. Your immunity gets lowered. Get proper sleep. Drink the right amount of water, not tap water, because in a lot of places they put chlorine and a whole bunch of other crappy ass chemicals that can actually make you sick or worsen it. Yeah, I mean, you drink things like Dasani or Zephyr Hills is the best in my opinion, but if you can't get Zephyr Hills, like Dasani, things like that, you just drink a bunch of water, right? That helps. Eat healthy. That helps. And I see so much ignorance, everybody buying all this stuff. Again, this isn't going to be something that goes on for 2 weeks and it's over. This is going to be something that goes on for 6 months to a year plus. So if you all are so concerned about this, you better get your hazmat suits and be ready to stay in your house, because it's going to go on for a while. You're not going to have a vaccine. I don't care what anybody says. You're not going to have a vaccine in anything less than a year. Vaccines technically should not take anything less than 10 to 15 years to do them right, because anything less, such as a year, 2 years, guess who's going to be the guinea pigs on those? You all. And no, they're not going to put them out because no extensive testing can be done in 1 to 2 years for anything, which is why you're not going to get them that quick. I don't care who tells you that. Again, I don't care if it's the President of the United States. I don't care if it's the head of the CDC. It's not going to happen. And if they do it, it's not tested correctly. It's not going to happen. Now, they can produce a vaccine, but there have been vaccines in the past, and we're not going to do a vaccine argument because, again, I think the pros outweigh the cons for vaccines, but there have been vaccines in the past that have not had extensive processing, extensive testing done, and have harmed millions of people back in the 60s. Millions of people have been affected and were harmed by them because of not so much extensive testing was done, which is why they mandated a certain amount of guidelines for the testing and vaccines, which is why they take so long. Okay. But again, pro and con. Now there are people who could be allergic to certain things in this new vaccine for COVID-19. So pro versus con again. Like I said, this is not that simplistic, and it is not going to go on for 2 weeks. So I don't know what everybody's plan is. Again, are they just going to buy up all the disinfectant sprays and everything for the next year to 2 years? I mean, now it's toilet paper and there's masks, and now there's a shortage on masks at hospitals for people who need them. And people who should be using this stuff, the disinfectant spray and masks the most, are people who have it to keep it from spreading, right? Not the healthy people, because your eyes, you're going to expose anyways. And then we have all the people who think if they just shut everything down, shut the schools down, shut work down, shut all the businesses down, shut everything down, it'll end everything will go away. Well, no, that's not true at all. And we can prove this with influenza. Yes, that's right. Flu season is a sure way indicator to show that that is only a temporary solution. Yes, it will lower the rate, but then spike it back up again immediately after. How do we know this? So, right with influenza season, there's a huge spike right at the end of the year. Then, of course, we have winter break. So the kids aren't around, passing around. They're not giving it to mom and dad. Mom and dad aren't taking it to the grocery store, to work, and spreading it, so on and so forth. Then it lowers during that time because the kids aren't around. So as of right there, yes, theory proven. However, as second they go back to school, what happens? Within 2 months, we have our next flu season. Yes, that's right, because they are going back and that virus, somebody has it, it gets spread all over again. It is not a solution. It is a Band-Aid. It is a temporary solution. It is not a fix. Because again, kids spread the majority of all this stuff. They give it to mom and dad and that spreads that way. So when you take them away from each other, yes, temp solution lowers, right? Flu season, winter break. After winter break, again, goes right back up. So no, that is not a solution. It's not going to fix anything. And no, we are not China. We are not Japan. This country is not a dictatorship in that sense. And legally, it cannot tell people to stay at home at all times. You need money for work. You have to get food. We don't hunt. Animals can't get COVID-19, so I guess technically you could hunt, but the majority of people today wouldn't have a damn clue how to do it. And even then, we would start spreading it around out in the woods when we see each other, right? So it wouldn't make any difference. America, the USA, cannot quarantine an entire country or keep them in their house. It is not legal. They cannot do it. I think the only way certain states can even do it is if there's something on the level of a black plague, and even then, nobody's going to go out to enforce it, right? Now, again, that is on a federal level. Every single state has their own laws or statutes. So take Florida, for instance. Florida actually has a statute that states a judge can sign a warrant quarantining an individual. But that's an individual. Nowhere does that law state that they can quarantine a community or a state or city as a whole. What they have to do is that judge has to individually sign that warrant for each individual. And of course, somebody has to go then and deliver it to them personally. They have to place it in their hand, which means they have to come to the door in order to receive it legally. And no judge is going to sit there and sign every single one of these warrants, nor are they going to go around like this is some 28 Days Later, a zombie movie or some infectious disease movie where people showing up in hazmat suits and tanks, handing you pieces of paper or nailing a quarantine letter on your door. It's not going to happen. They can't legally, technically do that unless it's done on an individual basis, which means there has to be technically a warrant, signed judge warrant, like say if there's 4 people in a house. So they would have to leave or hand off 4 warrants for each of those people. It's not going to happen. This isn't China. This isn't Japan. This isn't a dictatorship. Again, this is why I always tell you cannot compare healthcare to countries. Every country is different. USA is one of the top countries, the top country actually, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the medical field. We are on the forefront. We are the top. You cannot say, well, because this many deaths occurred in Japan, it's going to happen here. Because you understand, like China and Japan have their own set of rules. They actually shut down Disney in the past for influenza because the way that they run their country. Cannot do that here. Disney didn't shut down on their own accord for COVID-19. It was forced upon them and mandated by the country because technically they're a dictatorship, right? So that's how it works in that country. That's not how it works in our country. Our country can handle hundreds of people with pneumonia, which is the leading cause of death from COVID-19, which even if you want to get into that argument, is less than 1%. Yes, people go, oh, there's this many, and there's this many deaths. No, it's not that simplistic because, again, you got to remember how many people were not diagnosed with it. Not everybody goes to the doctor. So, again, you can multiply that number minimally by 10 and that's how many people actually have it. I guarantee you there's over 20,000 people in this country right now with it. You won't know about it. So yes, but when they do is they actually will take blood samples and those things when people die to find out the cause. So the death rate is pretty damn dead on balls accurate. However, people who have it, that rate tenfold. So no, it is, you cannot go based on how many people were diagnosed and how many people died. It's not that simplistic. God, man, everybody wants to make everything so simplistic, and then when they try to debate things, they sound like idiots because it's not that simplistic. You're leaving out all the main variables. So no, the death rate is less than 1%. There's no freaking way it's not. It's not possible for it to be anything less than 1%. So keeping that in mind, it's not that drastic unless, again, you have one of those underlying conditions that we spoke of earlier. Now, again, this video was made simply for the fact that I wanted to get rid of, or at least try to remove some of the ignorance, because I've never seen so much ignorance about anything in my life as much as I have about COVID-19. It's just insane the way people are panicking. Some people have the right to panic, but you should still try to keep a level head. But the majority of people, there's not much to worry about unless you're worried about being the carrier to spread it to somebody you care about who falls into one of those categories, who could be severely harmed. So yes, pro and con. People should be worried, but not to the extent that they are right now, okay? With all that said, again, if you want to know what my theory is on how COVID-19 actually got started, go ahead and give this a big thumbs up because, again, 300 likes on this video will get you that video. Otherwise, this will probably be the only COVID-19 video on this channel. Also, I want your thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think about the overhype? What are your thoughts on some of my suggestions on how we should be looking at it on all the variables? And are you one of the people who should be concerned? And rightfully so. I'm not saying everybody shouldn't be concerned. Some should, some I think shouldn't. But again, that just comes down to a lot of what people are being told and misinformed in certain scenarios. And if you're new here, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, hit notification bell, because if you don't know about kick-ass shit such as this, be sure to give me a big thumbs up, because again, 300 likes on this video will get you my theory on how COVID-19 was started on this channel. And if you haven't, join us in Discord, because that's where I'm having a kick-ass time in there. And don't forget about the Friday the 13th live stream on Friday the 13th, this Friday. Now, of course, if you're watching this video after Friday the 13th, it's no longer there. So don't worry about trying to sign up. Now, if you want to sign up for that, go ahead and join Discord. The reserved seating link is in there. And as always, I'll see you next time.